It's growing and growing and growing. If you thought UFOs were bad, try looking at a huge pile of rapidly growing AFOs, the kind that still need their buttons sewn on or to be blocked. It's getting out of control, and today we're going to take a look at some things I can do to organize my stash. Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to the Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and host of this podcast. If you are a new viewer, welcome to our podcast, and if you are a returning viewer, thank you and welcome back. We are going to be taking a look at some items that I need to get finished. I call them AFOs almost. Maybe like almost finished AFOs. Would that be AFO? Almost finished objects? If you're not familiar with the term FO or UFO, in knitting and crochet, an FO is a finished object, a project that we have completely knit or crocheted, finished, cast off, etc., and it's all ready to be oohed and awed over on Instagram. A UFO is an unfinished object, which means something that we're in the process of working on. More often than not, it's something that we were working on, we put down, walked away from, and now we have guilt about whether or not we need to go back and start it, rip it out, etc. So, an AFO is my new term, almost finished object, and that is what we're talking about today. So I have often been told that I'm a super fast knitter, and I think I probably am. I do tend to knit quite often. I'm what I like to call a lifestyle knitter. I don't just do it in the fall and winter. No worries if that's you. I think there's a place for all of us, but I'm one of those people who started that way. I'd pick it up, every winter and knit a little here and there, and then it rapidly grew until it was full-blown obsession. And yeah, so I knit year-round. I have knitting with me pretty much wherever I go. There's always a sock or a hat in my purse or in my backpack, and I'm constantly finding ways to fit in a few more stitches or another row. So that means that I get through quite a few finished objects. And even with running two businesses, I still managed to find quite a bit of time to knit, and it's easier now because one of my businesses is around yarn, and so I can always look at it as it's a necessary business practice to be knitting, because then I have to show off my yarns, and I have to be knitting patterns and have things to talk about on the podcast, and so I get really good excuses for why I can knit more. But that means that I end up with a bunch of projects that just kind of pile up, because here's the secret. I'm really, really bad at finishing. It's the bane of my existence. I love the actual knitting. Like picking out the pattern and daydreaming on Ravelry or looking through my pattern books and then playing around in my stash to pick stuff out is my favorite thing. And then I cast it on. The casting on and getting started is sometimes a little bleh. I hate swatching, and I'm not actually a big fan of casting on. But after I get 2 or 3 rows in is where I hit my stride, and then from then till the end of the project it's super fun for me. Unless I have to pick up more than 20 stitches, then it's kind of miserable, but whatever. That's another issue altogether. And so I love the actual knitting, but once I get done and I need to weave in those ends, that's the worst part, and sew on buttons, only slightly better, and block, crap, that's the part I hate. So you know what happens? Quite frequently I put that part off, and I have a knitting basket that just grows and grows and grows and grows because I just stuff mostly finished objects in there, and I think, well, one of these days I'll have time to block that, but I don't have time right now. We're in the middle of watching a movie and I don't want to get up and disrupt it and whatever. Or we have friends over that we're talking to and I can't go block my sweater in the sink while we're all playing games and talking in the living room, right? Or whatever it is. There's always some good excuse for why I can't do that. So I finally decided today that it was time to tackle some of those objects, and I wanted to share with you guys what I've been working on, what I finished but need to totally finish, so that you can help me have the motivation to finish. One of the things I love about this podcast is it's really inspiring me to get projects done and to keep finding new things and trying new things. Like our wool series has really inspired me to try some new stuff. So I've also been working on knitting a new project with some new wool that we're going to be bringing back to our wool series. I know we've taken quite a break from it, but I am coming back to it, I promise. I just wanted to give myself time to knit with the yarns that I picked up from Goth Farm Yarns a few weeks ago, and I wanted to knit some stuff with it so that I could actually review the yarn in our wool series instead of just reading what other people have to say about it. So that's coming. But in the meantime, let's look at what I've been working on. So the first thing that I want to show you is my floozy cardigan. If you guys have been watching the podcast for a while or following me on Instagram or Facebook, you have already seen the work I've been doing on the floozy. Floozy is a color work slip stitch, so it looks like Fair Isle, but it's really, or stranded knitting, but it's really a slip stitch pattern. So you're only working one color each round, and you just slip stitches to create the color work pattern. It does create this kind of puckered fabric, I don't know if you can see that, when you're actually working on it, but as you block it, that'll stretch out and lay out really nice and flat. At least that's what I'm hoping. I thought about blocking it while still on the needles once I finished the colorwork yoke because I was a little worried about it, and I thought, well, that will just make me feel better. But I didn't because I was sure it would be fine, and I was too lazy, and I hate blocking, so I didn't. So now I need to block it because I finally finished everything except for sewing on the buttons. I still have a few ends to weave in. I've woven in a few of them as I went, but I still have a few ends to weave in, and then I need to sew on the buttons and block it. So I think I'm going to block first and then do the sewing and weaving after that. And so this is going to be my project that I'm going to try to get done within the next week. So hopefully, fingers crossed, hopefully I'll have it to show you very soon. It'll kind of just depend on if I can find room to block that. The next thing that I have finished, oh, and by the way, I will put links to these patterns below so that you can see what I'm doing. The floozy cardigan is one that we featured on the podcast a lot because I made yarn kits for it. And so the pattern is actually by Libby Johnson, who is a New Zealand designer, and her design name and her Instagram name is Truly Myrtle. I think her Instagram is Truly Myrtle Photos. She has absolutely beautiful color sense, and the floozy is a really, really lovely knit. I did make the 3/4 length sleeves as opposed to the full length sleeves because I wanted this to be more of like a spring and fall cardi, kind of like a lightweight, more springy, summery type, which is part of why I chose the colors that I did. These colors are from my shop. This is my hand-dyed yarn, and it is the Girly floozy kit that I had available as a dyed to order option. And so the body is La Vie en Rose, which is one of my absolute favorite colors I have ever dyed in my whole life. And then Vintage Vixen is this dark pink up here, excuse me. And then this white is just a bare undyed white that I call the Emperor's New Yarn. It is something, currently you cannot get it as a full skein, but I will be adding that to the shop later this fall. Some of my regular bases, I'm going to have undyed bases that come ready to knit, just don't have the color, so that way you can get that pure bright white, and it makes a really, really nice contrast with the other colors that I've dyed up. So sometimes it's nice to have that white to just kind of ground a more busy speckle or a busy variegated color. So I want to have that available for you. So that is coming in the future to the shop. But I named it the Emperor's New Yarn because that was actually my husband's idea. He came up with that brilliant idea, and we just thought it was really cute and funny. Because if you guys don't know, but the Emperor's New Clothes, excuse me, I almost said the Emperor's New Groove, which is the Disney movie. But the Emperor's New Clothes is an old folktale or fairy tale that's basically about some con men who convince the emperor, who is super arrogant and vain, they convince him that the best, most luxurious cloth that he can buy, he only wants the best, and the best is this invisible cloth that only those who are the most prestigious in the land and the most worthy can see. And so he is so vain that he buys into it, and he doesn't want to admit to them that he can't see what they're talking about, so he just basically pays them a bunch of money for this luxury cloth that is totally made up, and they're just pretending to like cut and sew and like, oh, look at this and all that. And then he goes naked out in the streets and walks up and down naked in front of everyone, and everybody had heard about his new clothes, and so all of the like upper class people in the village don't want to admit that they're not classy enough or not prestigious enough or not worthy to see the fabric, so they all pretend to see it too, until a little kid, as little kids like to do, just announced to everyone that the emperor's naked. So that's the story, and because of that we decided to name the naked yarn Emperor's New Yarn. So that's the white in here. So if you ordered one of my kits, what you get is however much you need for the body based on your sizing, and then you get one full 100-gram skein of each of the contrast colors. So the original pattern, you would have knit the white up here and at the very bottom section, So the top and bottom would be white instead of pink. But I rearranged the colors because I wanted to have more pink and just pop the color a little bit more. I just wanted more pink in mine. So you can totally do that because I send you a 100-gram skein of each when you're only going to use slightly over 50 grams probably of one of the colors and probably about 120 grams of the other color. So you're going to have, or sorry, not 120 grams, I'm sorry, 120 yards, which is like maybe, yeah, you're probably only going to use about 50 grams of one color, and I think it was like 20 grams of the next color or something. So you'll have plenty left over from your contrast colors to knit something small, like small size socks or like fingerless gloves that you stripe or something like that. But that way you can change the colors around if you want to. Or you can just knit it the way the pattern brings it. So the next thing that I actually finished this a while ago, I just forgot to show it to you, and this has been on the podcast before as well. This is technically called The Path to Wonderland, but I lovingly dubbed mine The Path to Hell. Not because the pattern was hellacious in any way, shape, or form. It was actually a very fabulous pattern that I highly recommend, so I'll put that link below as well. This shawl is so much fun if you really just want a nice garter stitch, easy peasy, really pretty shawl. And it's so fun if you have really high contrast colors like I've done. You can do it with lower contrast colors, of course, but it's most effective with a really high contrast color. So I used a solid black yarn. This is just Jojo Land Ballad in their black solid colorway, commercially dyed. And then I striped it with a skein from Inked Sheep Fibers. I just absolutely love her colorways. And so I used her Sunwell color for this beautiful fiery color that has little black speckles on it. And I just love that really bright contrast. So it reminded me of flames though when I was knitting, especially because the edging, if you can see that, is this really great picot. I hope you can see that. All along the edge. It's like this little sawtooth edging the whole way down one side of the shawl. So it totally just reminded me of flames when I was knitting it. So I started calling it The Path to Hell very early on, like right after starting it, and I thought it was so funny. I think I'm hilarious, you guys. I don't know if you think that, but I think I'm hilarious. So I thought it was so funny that I continue to call it The Path to Hell. So here's the crazy thing. I probably should block this ending part to get it to just lay super, super flat. So I'm still debating that. But I kind of don't like to overblock. I think most people tend to overblock by blocking everything. Some things really just don't need it, and some things are even hurt by blocking, like ribbing is not a good thing to block, except very lightly, unless you're really trying to change the shape and add more drape to it. So I don't think I want to block this shawl because it's all garter stitch, which doesn't really need blocking. But I could probably just like flatten slightly the ending section and maybe sharpen up some of the sawtooth edging. But I think I like it the way it is. I think it lays okay just the way that it is. But I do still have a couple ends to weave in, so that's going to be my project either tonight or tomorrow, is to try and weave those ends in so I have at least one thing off of my pile. Hopefully. Okay. So next thing that we're doing, oh, I can't get this hair out of my face. This is a sweater that I knit over the summer, and I just finished it. I kind of put it on hold towards the end and just put off doing this bottom ribbing for like forever, and I finally picked it back up and finished it, I think the end of July or beginning of August, but I still haven't blocked it. And it does need blocking, but I think just a light blocking. I don't think I want to block it too terribly much because I don't want it to lose its wonderful bounce and springiness of the ribbing, but I do want to just kind of open up this lace just a little bit more so that it's just nice and spread out. So this is the Tongue-Tied Top by Amy Apple, who is Poison Girl Knits on Instagram. And she is one of my favorite like vintage inspired designers because she does all of her knits are like rockabilly inspired, so they're all kind of like 1950s-esque, and she does a lot of like little turbans and short high-waisted tops that you can wear with like high-waisted pants or a high-waisted pencil skirt and like short sleeves. They just look like the 40s and 50s. And so all of her designs, they're modern, so she does use a lot of like knitting in the round and things like that. Modern techniques, so they're more approachable than getting an authentic vintage pattern, and she has a lot more sizes than authentic vintage patterns, and so she's really great for that. But she still pays homage to the era very well, and I think she captures the era style very, very nicely while still giving it a modern enough take that you don't look like you're trying to dress up like the 40s, depending on how you style it. Or you can style it very, very 40s-esque, and I think it looks authentic. So it's a perfect like crossover piece for someone like me who just loves vintage, but there are days like today where I'm like, you know what, I'm not feeling it. I just kind of feel like letting my hair down and wearing leggings and a slouchy hat and being kind of a modern chick today. So anyways, all that to say, this tongue-tied blouse was super fun to knit, but I did struggle with the lace yoke, I'm not gonna lie. I had some problems with it. I managed to work it out, but because of the way you knit it, there are short rows and you're knitting back and forth on the lace yoke part before you join in the round. And so because of the way the lace is, and it is lace on every row, there's no resting rows between, so because of that, on the back part everything looks perfectly even, and then on the front, unfortunately, I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can even find it here. Okay, it's pretty subtle, so hopefully you can't see it, but there is a little section right here in the front where the lace just doesn't quite line up right, and it goes across both sides, and it almost looks like a little like line right here. I'm hoping that blocking makes it less noticeable, and I'm also hoping that it's just not a big enough deal to me that I mind, but I was pretty bummed by it, and I picked it out and redid it twice, and it never got any better. I still had the same problem, and I think it's because of the way the lace goes. When you're working in one direction, it makes sense, but then when you're doing like short rows and flipping back and forth, something was a little bit off somehow, or maybe I just didn't understand the pattern, and that's entirely possible. This is the first pattern I have knit from her. I've purchased several but have yet to knit any of them except for this one. So I am going to try one of her other patterns here pretty soon and see if maybe that one is a little more clear for me. Maybe this was just a weird technique. Maybe it was just a weird stitch for me, or maybe I just misunderstood it. To be fair, I didn't message her or ask her anything. I probably should have done that, but it was one of those things where I was just like eager and in a hurry, so I just didn't bother. I just tried to figure it out, and then I was like, yeah, you know, it's fine, whatever. I'm a very non-perfectionistic, I think that's what I'm looking for. I'm not a perfectionistic knitter, so rather than bug her, I just kind of plowed through. But I still need to weave in the last end or two and then lightly block the yoke, but other than that, it's ready to wear, and I cannot wait. And I better hurry up because it's starting to get chilly outside, and I love it, but it's like perfect right now. But in Kansas City, our falls and springs are like you blink and you miss them. So I need to hurry up and wear that before it's too chilly to wear short sleeves anymore. Okay, the next things I have to show you are sadly a couple of failures on my part, and I'm not very happy about it. But I thought about hiding my shame and not letting you guys see it, even though both of these things were things I showed on the podcast when I was thinking about casting them on, and then when I first cast them on. I thought in both of the next projects I would just hide and not ever bring up again, and you guys would forget and nobody would bother to ask me, and then I wouldn't have to deal with it. And then I thought, you know, a couple weeks ago I did that podcast on No Shame Handmade, hashtag No Shame Handmade, where we were talking about not feeling embarrassed that we're not good enough, that our hand knits aren't, or our hand crocheted items or whatever aren't up to par. Like, who's setting this invisible standard anyways, and why do we think that we can't share what we've made with our hands just because we're not the best in the whole wide world? And that's the problem with the internet, right? Like, you can get on Facebook and join an international knitting group that has literally hundreds of thousands of members all over the entire world. There's always going to be someone worse than you and always someone better than you in that. So no matter how good you do, you're always going to be able to find somebody who either knits something better, finishes it better, blocks it better, or maybe they're just cuter and skinnier than you and they look better in that pattern that you both knit, right? There's always going to be somebody doing that. And so rather than letting ourselves feel ashamed or try to hide what we're doing, I did a podcast a couple weeks ago where we talked about how to not feel ashamed anymore and how to just own it and be proud of ourselves and like honor the process of learning and growing and getting better, as well as the fact that we're just freaking making things with our own hands, which is pretty dang magical. So if you missed it, I highly recommend you go back and watch that from 2 weeks ago. I'm hoping that it will really, really help you. I was thrilled after releasing that. I got some of the sweetest and most heartfelt messages in the whole wide world from you guys, just thanking me for doing a video on that topic, and so many people that said that they were really moved and touched by it. So many people that said that they had been afraid to post photos of their objects on Instagram or on Facebook or show it to their friends or even wear it out of the house because they didn't feel like it was good enough, and that I gave them the courage to just say, you know what, screw it, I made it and I'm proud of it and I'll get better next time and I'll just keep learning. And so that meant so much to me. Thank you guys for telling me. Every time you guys leave me a comment, I read every single comment and I respond personally to everyone. I don't just have somebody that checks my messages for me, and I read every comment, and I really appreciate when you guys take the time to comment on my videos, no matter what you say, even if you disagree, but especially for those of you that take the time out to send me a message or leave a comment that lets me know that this was impactful and positive in your life. Just really makes my day. And so thank you for you guys that sent some absolutely beautiful things and really encouraged me. It kind of reminded me of why I do this and why I stress out about doing these videos every week. Sometimes I stress out trying to get them done on a deadline, but yeah, that's what I'm here for. That's why I started the podcast. Yeah, it's to promote my hand-dyed yarn, but more than that, it's to promote knitters. So, with that said, I decided to listen to my own message and just share with you guys my failures, because we all have them, no matter how good we are. And I'm by no means the best or the most professional knitter, but I have failures too. Oh, this one is so bad, I have like all these balls of like nasty yarn falling out of it. So you may have remembered, if you've watched the podcast before, you may have remembered me mentioning that I was going to cast on a stole, a brioche shawl, called the Coffee at the Grand Stole. Remember this one? Yeah, me too. So this pattern is by Leslie Robinson, I believe. I'll put the link below. She does this beautiful kind of, it reminded me of Downton Abbey, which is why I wanted to knit it. It just seemed very like old world and kind of like vintagey and classy. It's such a classy knit. So I wanted to knit this for like months, and I finally decided a few months ago that I was going to go stash diving and I wouldn't buy any new yarn and I wouldn't use any of my potion yarns from the shop. I would just go stash diving and use up old stuff that I had left over. And so I picked out these 3 colors, which, to be fair, don't look bad. They're actually really quite pretty together. But here's the rub. They're not me. Like, I would probably never wear these colors. And you'd think I would have figured that out by about here, but I didn't. Well, I did, but I pretended like I didn't, and I was like, I'm sure that's just this stitch pattern, which I actually really love this stitch pattern, by the way. I was like, I want to wait till I get to the brioche section. Okay, but you still would have thought I would have figured it out a little ways in, but I didn't. And I mixed 2 fluffy merino singles yarns with 1 4-ply bouncy sock weight yarn, commercially dyed, versus 2 hand-dyed. I don't mind mixing bases. I don't mind mixing hand-dyed with commercial. I do it all the time. All the time. I don't mind mixing bases at all, but they have to make sense. And this one I don't think is terrible, and I think I could make it work, but the bouncy 4-ply sock yarn was really pulling the 2 singles yarns. So the singles are real drapey and fluid, which is what I wanted my stole to be. And the sock yarn is real bouncy and tight and springy and elastic. So you have all this like drapey fluid and then bouncy. And so it was like pulling the fabric in while the other parts were trying to like loosen it up and stretch it out. And it just felt unbalanced to me and didn't seem to make sense. But here's where it really went wrong. I probably would have lived with it even then, and even with colors I didn't like. I was just planning to gift it to someone. I dropped a stitch, like 3 or 4 stitches, and it happened here, and I didn't discover it until here. And you guys, I've only been doing 2-color brioche for about a little over a year, maybe not quite 2 years, probably a year and a half. And I love it. 2-color brioche is my current obsession and has been for about 8 months. And I'm obsessed with it so hard that I have a million other shawls and sweaters in my queue that I'm planning to cast on, as well as some hats. Yeah, I love 2-color brioche hardcore. But I don't love trying to pick up stitches or go back and fix mistakes, especially when they're multiple rows down, like really big mistakes. I sat there and looked at this thing for almost an hour and could not figure out where I went wrong. And I decided to put it away till I was fresh. I came back to it a few days later, 30 minutes of looking at it, and was like, I can't even figure this out. So I threw it all in the basket and ignored it for several weeks, I think like 6 weeks, because that's what mature adults do, right? They just stuff their problems in the knitting basket and ignore it. At least that's what this mature adult did. So after a while, I finally pulled it out. And today, before the podcast, I was looking at it because I was trying to decide if I was going to admit to my shame or if I was going to just chuck it. And here's the thing. Again, these colors aren't bad. They're actually really pretty. But they're just not me. And the final deciding factor to not continue with this folly was I was on Instagram earlier. And someone that I follow who is a knitter who tends to really like gothy kind of colors. She's into like slightly more dramatic shawls and fingerless gloves, kind of like me. And she really likes jewel tones and deep dark blacks and charcoals. And I would just describe her color sense as a bit more like gothy romantic, which I'm so into. Like, obviously I'm into other things as well, but I'm super hardcore into gothy romantic styles. Jewel tones, blacks, mixed in with a few pastels to kind of set it off. I'm there all the way. So I love almost everything this lady posts. And she posted a photo of her coffee at the Grand Stole she just finished, and it was gorgeous. And she did like black, and I think it was like a bright deep violet and then some other color, and it was phenomenal. Like, I could not stop staring at her photos. And I commented and told her how much I loved it and that I was hating mine, so I thought I needed to rip it out and redo my colors. And she's like, yeah, go for it. And so that was the final straw. And today when I was looking at it before the podcast, I couldn't stop thinking about her photos I just saw. And I was like, you know what, that's it. That's it. If I don't love it, I'm not going to wear it, because frankly, I have about 18 other shawls in my closet right now, maybe more. And I've got a couple more on the needles, a couple more that I need to block, and like 72 probably in my queue on Ravelry. And so, you know what, there's never going to be enough time to knit and wear all the shawls that I love in my life. So why would I waste my time knitting something I don't love? I have not enough knitting time as it is, so I'm not going to waste my precious moments of crafting time on something that I will never wear, that I don't even have a recipient picked out for, and that now has a big gaping hole that's just going to keep unraveling and get ruined. It's not worth it. So I haven't decided what I'm doing with the yarn yet, if I'm going to frog the whole thing and save the yarn to make into other things, or if I'm going to donate the yarn or give it to my sister, who probably would love some free yarn. I haven't decided yet, but I have decided for sure that I'm ripping the needle out and I'm going to go back into the stash, and I don't know if I'm going to go stash diving again. I'm going to start there and try to stash dive, and then if I can't find what I need, I might... and we're on a pretty tight budget right now, and I'm trying not to buy any yarn, but I would consider at least looking to see if I could find the perfect thing online, and I might buy some yarn, or I might dye up some yarn, which is not as bad, not as good as stash diving, but not as bad as buying from someone else. It's a little bit cheaper, and I love working with my own colors. But I also love supporting other indie dyers and getting squishy mail, so we'll see. I might be really bad and use my lunch money next week to buy some yarn instead. So we'll see. But I definitely want to redo this in colors that I love. Here's the thing though, I will say, I freaking love this pattern. If you haven't knit this yet and you love two-color brioche, if you don't love two-color brioche, you probably won't like it, because that's the majority of it. It does have some one-color brioche at the bottom, and this is like a really cool slip stitch. This is actually probably my favorite part. I think this like woven kind of where you weave all three colors in there is just stunning, and it's not hard at all. It looks really hard, but if you've never done this, it's so stinking easy. You can absolutely do it. So yeah, I am going to frog this whole thing and pick out colors that I love. So that's my first failure, which I'd prefer, instead of calling it a failure, to call it a learning experience, right? I do actually believe that all of our failures are learning experiences. I'm not trying to make fun of people who say that, but yeah. Sometimes I just have to say it in a funny voice. It's either that or I'm going to cry over all the hours I put into that shawl, which I am now going to rip out. Also, it's single ply and it's real fluffy, so it's not going to be easy to like get it back into a skein, but whatever. Okay, my next failure, and this one is a big fat failure. Like, I don't even know if I want to take the time to frog it. It's so bad. So I mentioned months ago on the podcast that I was knitting something by Suzanne Summer, who is one of my favorite shawl designers. She does a lot of brioche knit. She did the You Rock shawl that I did recently, which is my favorite shawl I think I've ever knit. It's so amazing. And she also did one I did last year called Love You Baby. Also loved that shawl. So I did Mystery She Wrote, which was a mystery cowl she did. I did not do the mystery cowl. I bought it afterwards so I could see all the pictures and decide if I liked it or not. But I did purchase the pattern, and then I cast it on months ago, and I knit most of it, like 2/3 or more of it, pretty quickly, and then I put it down, and I don't remember the reason, but there was some very important reason why I couldn't take it with me, because it was just too fiddly or something. And so I put it away because I was going to be gone a lot and not home much, and I kind of meant to put it down for like a day or two, and I put it down for like a month or two. And so then I pulled it back out, and picked it up, and I was in this really difficult part. So you knit these like brioche triangles, and then you pick up stitches on the side, and you knit this really long stripy garter stitch point, and then you go back and pick up around all of the edge, this pink and purple edging, you pick up afterwards. So you have like thousands of stitches on the needle at that point. I think it had to have been almost 1,000 stitches, if not over 1,000. It was a mess. And then you do a short row technique in garter stitch, which sounds like my favorite thing because I love garter stitch and I love short rows, but oh my god, I don't know if I'm just not smart right now, or if I just had a miscommunication with the pattern, or if maybe it just isn't written super well. I hate to say that because I love Suzanne Summers, and I've knit several of her other patterns and never had a problem, so my guess is the problem is with me, not her. And to be fair, I haven't reached out to the designer and asked her. I just, with the stubbornness of a bulldog, blindly stumbled on and tried to figure it out myself because I'm smart enough, right? And then clearly realized I am not smart enough. Oh, and I think I said garter stitch. It's actually seed stitch, which that's the other thing. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Why isn't it just garter stitch? Seed stitch is beautiful, but not when it's on like 1,002 stitches. Like, really, seed stitch makes me want to claw my eyes out, but I freaking love how it looks, so it's one of those trade-offs. Like, it looks super cool, but it's really annoying. Anyways, so I knit all of that, and so here's the problem. I don't know if you can see this too well. This part is supposed to lay like a nice flat little point. Now I haven't blocked it yet, but do you see how this is puckering up here? It's creating this little like hood. So you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when I was 3 years old and I'd get out of the bath and my mom would put this little hood that looked like a ducky on me and then wrap me up in my towel. This is how I should wear it, I think. You guys, seriously, this is embarrassing. I'm not a new knitter. I shouldn't be having these problems, but I did. Oh, I don't know what I did. The only thing I can think is that I didn't pick up enough stitches, which is crazy because I was anal about putting markers and dividing my stitch counts and figuring out how many rows I needed to go. I was like anal on this shawl, and I even pulled out and like redid the pickup of the stitches like 3 times because I kept getting it wrong, and I still ended up like this. I don't know how that happened. So the problem is, of the 3 yarns I used, 2 of the yarns I absolutely love. The pink and purple one came from Nerd Girl Yarns here in Kansas City. She's actually not in Kansas City, but in the area. She's out in rural Missouri. And this is like a pink and purple sparkle yarn. I love that yarn. And I also love the, I don't know if you can see it too well. On this side, this aqua and pink and white kind of speckly yarn that I used. It's hard to tell because these 2 yarns are so close together, but the one that has all the aqua in it is from Leon Alexander Yarns, and I am obsessed with it. It's a gorgeous color. So I don't want to just like give it to the thrift store or like trash it because these are beautiful yarns, but I don't want to, like, I've already bound off and everything. I didn't weave in all of my ends. I only wove in like 2, so I have a lot of ends to weave in, so I probably can pick it out. But like, guys, I like cut yarn several times to like, because this shawl construction, you like knit a triangle and then like cut the yarn and like pick up stitches here and go this way and then cut the yarn and then pick up stitches here and go this way. Like, it's crazy modular construction, and I'm just not good at it apparently. And I don't care about the other yarn, which was an oopsie skein I bought on sale from Primrose Yarn Company, and I actually kind of hate it, but I think it's just because I don't like it with these other colors. So I don't care about that yarn, but the other ones I really like, and I don't want to get rid of them, but I don't want to pick this out. And if I give it to my sister and let her pick it out, she probably would because she's more patient than me, but then I'd feel obligated to give her my yarn. Like all of it, not just one skein of it. I suppose I could ask her to pick it out and then be like, hey, I'll give you like a sweater set of hand-dyed yarn from my shop if you do that for me. I wonder if she would do that. I should ask her. Because I hate frogging this much yarn. But I probably will just pick a day when I'm like kind of too tired to knit. You know those days when you're like, all I can handle right now is a garter stitch rectangle because I have not got the ability to do anything more complicated. Or like, I have those a lot of times after I've had a little bit of wine and I'm kind of tipsy. So maybe I just need to wait till one of those days and then just pick it out and slowly start frogging in front of Netflix. Like, I can't be too tipsy or I won't be able to focus on that. But if I'm just slightly tipsy, then that'll keep me occupied, but not, like, be too hard. I don't know. clearly I don't know what I'm doing, but I wanted to share that one with you too, because failure is inevitable. You know, anytime you try to do something great, you're gonna fail. Remember Thomas Edison, that old tired cliche, but it's true. How many times did he work on the light bulb before he stole somebody else's idea for it? Is that what I've heard? I've heard that Edison stole it, right? Or maybe I'm thinking of someone else. I don't want to slander anyone, but I think I've heard that he stole it. Doesn't matter. The point is, you're always going to fail a lot more than well, I don't want to say a lot more than you're going to succeed. That's depressing. Maybe you won't, but I think that you're going to fail more times getting started on something, especially when you're doing something new. And so that's what I'm trying to remind myself. I don't know what the coffee at the Grand, I don't have an excuse for that because I'm not new to two-color brioche or knitting or anything, but or picking out colors. I just don't love what happened. But, you know, the Mysteries She Wrote is a new technique for me, a lot of new techniques for me, and so I'm not going to beat myself up over it. I don't think I'd ever knit the pattern again, but I don't think that should stop you from trying it because, like I said, I might just not be smart. And honestly, there's a stubborn part of me that's like the first two sections, the brioche triangles were like amazing. I could knit those all day long. And the garter stitch stripey whatever was actually pretty fun and easy. It was good TV knitting. It was just that dang border. So part of me wants to like do it again, but instead of picking up and knitting the border, to actually go in and crochet a border so I don't have to pick up stitches and I can just make it as big as I need to or whatever. I've thought about doing that. The other thought is that I might just try it again and just go slower and just ask for more help on Ravelry or something and just see. Because part of me is like stubbornly, I don't want to get licked by this thing. So we'll see. Okay, so there's only one other project I have to show you, and we gotta go fast because I'm over time, but I finished a hat. I finished a hat. If you watched my IGTV videos this week, you already saw this hat, but I had to show it on the podcast too because I love it. So I actually knit this towards the end of the summer, so it was probably, I think in August I knit it, maybe end of July. But it was way too hot to wear it, and I didn't get any pictures of it because I put this cute little faux fur pom-pom on, and it just seemed more wintry and not like a spring and summer hat, and I've just been lazy about my pictures. So look at that pom-pom, you guys. I don't know if you can see that. Look at that beauty. It's like, oh, this is a much better angle. There you go. It's a super soft powder pink color, and it's just beautiful. It's like an exotic desert bloom or something. I get my faux fur pom-poms. I've only bought a few, but the ones that I have purchased so far, I have bought from FF Fabu Knits. I don't know if I'm saying it right, or maybe it's Fabu Knits. I don't know, but it's FFFABU Knits, and I'll put a link to her Etsy shop in the comments below so you guys can go support her. Please go support her. She has an Etsy shop, and she's a handmade maker like me. And I think she might do yarn as well. I don't know, but I know her big thing that I learned about her from another maker who was raving about her pom-poms, and I really wanted to buy some faux fur pom-poms, and I saw hers, and she had such a wide variety of colors and styles, and then the prices were affordable, but the quality is good, so they're not like, probably not the cheapest you can get. It's not like those big lots of 50 you can buy on eBay for like 20 bucks or whatever. I don't know about the quality. Maybe those are good ones, I don't know. But hers were just really phenomenal, and I loved that you could buy them in different sizes. So she has like baby ones all the way to like humongous ones. So this is from her shop, and then the yarn that I used is my Zombie Prom Queen colorway, and this is the Dryad DK, which is my merino cashmere and nylon DK base. This is my first time knitting with this base. I have knit with my Dryad sock before, but I had never knit with the DK version. And I was very excited because every time I would knit it and take it to shows or trunk shows or whatever, or just stock it in the shop online and someone would buy it, I was always a little jealous when somebody else bought my yarn because I was like, this feels amazing and it takes the colors beautifully and it looks so squishy and amazing. I want to knit with that. And I really wanted to knit with this colorway, and every time I would dye it, it would sell out like instantly, and I'd be like, well, dang it, now I don't get any. So this last time I dyed up several and I took them to a show, and it was a while ago. I want to say at the beginning of the summer. I had some that I dyed up and took to a couple shows, and I dyed a bunch of the DK, and so some of it sold but not all of it. And so when I came home from those, I was like, I am taking one single skein for me and the rest can go in my shop because I gotta have it. And then at my next show, somebody came in and bought all the rest of them. So good thing I saved that one for me. And I loved it. It was great. And you know what? The cool thing is this hat only took about half the skein. So you could probably even get two, especially if you made the body just a little bit shorter. I knit mine a little bit long. Here's the rub. I do not have a pattern link for you on this because I did not use a pattern. I just made it up. However, I posted photos of it today on Facebook and Instagram, and everybody was begging me for the pattern, and I was like, sorry, no pattern. I just made it up, and everybody has been begging me for the pattern still. So I'm not promising anything because I tried designing a couple years ago and I never got to the point of ever putting anything on Ravelry or even getting test knitters, just because I felt overwhelmed by the industry and all the things that you needed to have. And I still feel overwhelmed by it, but I feel like I could probably manage to do a couple easy free patterns or something just to help support the yarn. Now that I'm more in the industry and I know some people who are designers, I am sure I could get some feedback there. So I've had several people, several good friends, indie dyers and designers that I have been working with in the industry who commented today as well and said, if you need test knitters, let me know. And I was like, okay, you guys gotta stop, because now I'm getting all excited and I don't have time to be a designer too. But yeah, this is a super, super easy one. So if I did, it would probably be, you know, just a simple pattern here and there. I'm not gonna do anything real complicated yet. Maybe someday, but we'll see. Hopefully I can have the time to write this down because it really wasn't too hard, and I loved that it was super quick. It's so cozy, you guys. And the main reason that I chose to do this is I really wanted to get a hand knit with this Zombie Prom Queen colorway because it's one of the ones that every time I list it, people go nuts over how pretty it is in the skein. But everybody's always like, but how's that gonna knit up? You know, what's that gonna look like? Now here's the rub. I do have almost half the skein left. So I need to knit a swatch that is going to be smaller or bigger, or both, than my hat, because as we've talked about on this podcast before, your gauge is going to change the way your colors look. So if I knit the same yarn into a sweater that's in the round, so it's going around a lot more than this hat, it's going to change the way the color falls. So you're not going to get these neat little stripes if you do it on a sweater that's bigger than this, which is like not even a baby size, right? So, and if you do it on socks, there are DK weight socks, or I have this colorway in a sock yarn. If you do it on socks, it is gonna look different than it's going to look on DK. So this is just a general guideline, but it will look different depending on the gauge, the stitch pattern, etc., right? So I did wanna have this to show people, but I always like to give that disclaimer because hand-dyed yarns really do change based on the gauge of your pattern. Alrighty, so I hope you love it as much as I do. I do, and I really didn't want to do my hair today before the hair salon. I had like errands I had to run before work, before I came home and did more work on the yarn and podcast. So I just threw this hat on, and I love that I didn't have to do my hair, and I felt like I looked real cute anyways, so I'm pretty happy with it. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. It is now time to cast off. Love you.